I remember the moment I dropped him off at his base and I looked at him and I thought, is this the last time I'm ever going to see him? At the time, I thought it would be a great career for him, actually. He was interested in that and that's what he wanted to do. I felt quite proud that he did want to join the army, and of course when he said he was joining there were no major wars like Iraq or Afghanistan, and I think I may have felt slightly differently if there had been. I had a long time to prepare for him going. I knew about a year in advance. It was quite a long time I knew to adjust, and I knew that there were months ahead and I'd have to eventually, realise that he was going to Afghanistan. I did find I was carrying the burden a lot. I mean, I have obviously family, but I couldn't really talk to them too much about it. I felt like I wanted to really not talk about it because I felt that if I talked about it, something would happen. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I had a really strange sensation, but I had to say to myself, you don't get phone calls with the army. You know that if something happens, somebody will come to your house. At first, I really tried to think I was having a sort of like a dream, because I'd had dreams as such where I heard knocking on the door and then realised it was nothing, but this was the actual bell, and I knew it wasn't a dream. There was a soldier on the doorstep in uniform. He started to establish my identity, but I didn't want any of that. I actually grabbed him by the shoulders and I said, look, is he dead? Is he dead? Pretty quickly after that, he did say to me, no, he's not dead, but he's very seriously injured. So he came in and he sat with us, and I was absolutely determined. Somebody somewhere must know what his injuries were. The captain who came sat with us, and he made lots of phone calls, and about two and a half hours later, he had somebody from Camp Bastion on the phone, and he said to me, do you want me to ask her what they are? And I said, no, I need to speak to her. So I spoke to a nurse at Camp Bastion, and she was able to tell me that he was in a critical condition, but he'd got all his limbs, and he'd moved his limbs. He'd had his spleen removed, and he'd had some injuries to his neck, which they weren't sure about. It's the most awful feeling that you have, that your child sort of might be dead. It was just that very thought of imagining that he was never going to come back. Nearer the time when we knew the flight was sort of in the air, we were driven to Birmingham. Probably an hour later, Sammy was all fixed up in the critical care ward, and we walked over and saw him for the first time, which was, it was great. I mean, I felt like, my boy's back and he's here now, he's safe, I'm with him, he's not going to go anywhere, and able to touch his hair, and it was full of sand, and it just looked like, my son, and it was fantastic. The 6 weeks I spent at the hospital, I only left it once nearer the time Sammy was a bit better, but it was the mothers who were there all the time. We sort of lived there, and we had a sort of bond between us that we could all talk about it, and some things were going good for us at some point, then another day there would just be a setback with one of us, but we had this kind of bond, which was great because it really helped to deal with the situation. But it was always the mothers. I mean, I think fathers came and went, but the mothers were we were all the ones who stayed there all the time. It will always stay with me, and I'll never forget it. It will be there forever.